Good morning, afternoon, whenever you're watching this. This is a real darn shame. We had this going for like 7 minutes and it was awesome, and then the thing froze. So, just to recap, we talked about. Oh, Joey's on, obviously. You can say hi.
Hello there.
He's as frustrated as I am right now. So we were talking about the McDonald's hack, a whole bunch of other things. I want you to talk about what we just did with the robots in Japan, though.
Yeah. I read an interesting article this week, and we were just discussing about how the McDonald's hack, was in South Korea and Taiwan. Private information of both customers and employees leaked, and we had mentioned that a lot of people think the United States is the most advanced in the world, but a lot of these other countries like South Korea, Japan, and China are pretty far advanced. And I had seen an article this week discussing a new robotic hotel in Japan where there's not a single human that works there. You walk up to the front desk and there's two robots. They look like humans, but they're not humans. They're robots, and they will talk to you in your native tongue. So if you talk to them in English, they will assist you in English and help you get to your room. And it's just stuff that we would never fathom in America.
I think we need to go.
Yeah,
I think we need to go check it out.
I agree. We do some field research
That would be
on
so
the
much
topic
fun.
and
Yeah.
report back.
Get like a little vlog going or something like that. That would be hilarious too. I know we were talking about trying to get this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everything because I think it's just easier. Nowadays, no one wants to sit down and like actively watch a video, and I don't blame you because you can listen to something while doing 10 other things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I listen to more podcasts than I would say I watch videos as well throughout the workday, even when I'm relaxing, playing video games or anything along those lines, or even driving in the car. Maybe I don't want to listen to music and you just want to listen to someone talk for a little bit.
I was trying to think about when the whole podcast shift happened because I found podcasts when I was in like, it's probably about 8 years ago as I found it and I was like, wow, this is a thing no one's doing, like not at all. And I was listening to a podcast one time and I actually remember someone was like, hey, what are you listening to? And I said, a podcast. And they're like, what the hell is that? I was like, well, yeah, I mean, it isn't anything, but nowadays that's like the hot thing. Like, the going joke is like, oh, you can just pull any random dude off the street and be like, yeah, what's your podcast? And he'll have one. So I guess it's probably true. We're filing into that stereotype, but still, it's good to have a voice.
I think it's great for anyone to have a podcast, and whether or not people listen to it, at least you're putting your voice out there, and you never know what could take off. You never know if you don't try, right?
I totally agree with that. Exposure is everything.
Exactly. And it is funny. I think I don't necessarily remember when I first realized podcasts were a thing, but I do remember the first one I ever listened to was Barstool Sports, Part of My Take.
I love Part of My Take.
I listened to their very first episode when they released it because it was the most bizarre thing. I might have been a sophomore in high school and I was laying in bed, couldn't fall asleep, and I thought maybe I could fall asleep if I had something in the background. So I looked for a good sports podcast, came across this random podcast named Part of My Take by a company I never heard of before, never heard of Barstool, didn't know what it was.
They didn't exist. And that was,
yeah.
How long ago was that? That was probably about 8 years ago.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I put it on and they only had one episode and they were like, by Barstool Sports. I'm like, this is an ESPN. What is this?
Yeah. Even though they had their show for one episode, that was funny too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The show was great. But I digress. Yeah. I mean, podcast definitely a great way to get your voice and your thoughts out there.
I know. I found audible.com probably 6 months ago, maybe a little bit more, and it has been the absolute best thing in my entire life. I think it's like $15 a month, and you get your one free credit a month, obviously, and you can pay a little bit more to get more. But you don't realize listening to a book can be done anytime. Reading a book actually requires like sit down and say, okay, I'm going to commit to 30 minutes of reading before bed and do all this, and that's actually really good for you. I think you should do that, but we can listen and digest that information the same exact way while you're driving to work, driving to an appointment, doing all these things, working out. I listen to a book while I'm running. I'm like, I'm not trying to flex on anybody, but you can get that out of the way, and it's fantastic. And we couldn't do that 10 years ago. What a cool invention.
That is fascinating, and that's one thing I haven't gotten on. I haven't gotten on the train yet for is audiobooks. I still I read mostly, but I haven't listened to a book yet, and that's something I want to try. Maybe with those Thrawn books that you had discussed, since the voice actor
pleasure reading
actually reading
else.
It. So
compared to
that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, we're in the professional world now where we have to actually read normal people books, nonfiction and biographies and stuff, and then you pick up a pleasure reading book and it's completely different. Well, speaking of that, on that note, you'd mentioned before when we were recording, before it froze, the Neuralink that Elon Musk is doing, the chip in your brain to transfer information, would that even speed the process up even more? Like, could I listen to a book and process the information in 30 seconds and then like take a nap because you'll probably be absolutely flipping exhausted?
That's a good question. I have no clue. The capabilities of that. I mean, he's discussed what he thinks they can do before on different podcasts and such.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what he said off the top of my head, but I think, judging from where he set the bar at, I think he was discussing the ability to, communicate to another human without using words. If that's how high he's setting the bar, then I wouldn't be surprised if you would be able to digest the book in a quicker fashion as well. So
but then
we'll see what
could,
happens with that.
But people could advertise directly into your brain. Oh man, that is something I don't want to do.
And then we're talking about hacking. Wait till you hack someone else's brain. Now we're going down a rabbit hole.
Slippery. Yeah, we could go down this too easily. Yeah, we'll drag the conversation. We'll keep it on Elon Musk. And so I mentioned the Boring Company, which is exactly when it froze. So their big promise in 2016, he said, all right, we're making the Hyperloop. We're going to dig these tunnels. And the whole concept was, I'm sick of LA traffic, which I love because Jacksonville traffic is now getting really bad. I mean, Florida is so convoluted with people that an invention like that would solve a lot of problems. Problem is, we basically sit at ocean level. Like you can't go down. It's just water. And so I don't know how you'd solve that problem. I guess we have to go up. But okay, so either way, I'm completely getting off track here. What he did is whenever they had their press release this past week, he let everyone down. So he basically released, he said, all right, we've dug all these tunnels. Here's how they work. It's a human-driven Tesla. And I was like, what? This isn't what you promised. You promised me a big old train that gets me across. So it's progress. It's basically, you've got a human-driven Tesla, and you hop in, and you cut a 35-minute normal drive down to a 2-minute drive, because that thing will just go 170 miles an hour, fly through the tunnel, and be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. And here's one way to make it even better, too. Do not let those huge trucks on that road. They're not allowed on that road.
Couldn't
They're not.
Fix everything?
Yep, that would fix everything. I've always said if I could go back in time to when they built the railroads, as they were building the railroads, I would, right next to it, pave a road, and it would run side by side with the railroads, and only giant 16-wheeler freighter trucks would be allowed to drive on that road, and they would not be allowed on pedestrian highways. And that would solve everything.
It would. It's the same problem in Florida. And well, we're going to get to the truckers in a second, because that's another topic that I want to pick your brain on. But whenever we were overseas, I've been over to Germany, a few other places. It was interesting. So they're like, oh, the Autobahn, blah, blah, blah. And Americans don't really understand what the Autobahn is. There are still speed limits on 90% of the highway. There's only a few absolute free-for-all zones. But the Autobahn is so efficient because the lanes work. Like the Germans respect the lane system. And when you're in Florida, you know immediately, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a whole lot of people who just can't comprehend a 3-lane system. It just doesn't work in their brain. So middle lane, travel, right lane, exit, left lane, pass. Easy. Mm-hmm. And then you see it actually work in real life. And you're like, oh my God, it works. Why can't we do this? And Americans just can't get a grasp on it. But so let's do the truckers. So have you heard that there is just a massive shortage of truck drivers in America?
Really? It doesn't surprise me. I mean, I feel like there's shortages in a lot of industries right now, so I can definitely see that.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to go into it in the weekly recap. We're going to talk all about the labor shortages and the churn and burn that we've been seeing recently. But so my question to you is, because everyone has a different take on this, basically. When are we going to get our autonomous electric semis?
I'd say by 2040.
Really? You're putting that far out? Most people say, well, within 10 years.
It'll happen sooner, but I think all the shipping companies such as FedEx, UPS, USPS, if it's even still around in 2040 and not completely phased out, I think they will be moved to completely, not talking airplanes, just ground vehicles, completely electric, possibly autonomous by 2040.
Was it UPS that released that new, really weird-looking little truck that was all electric? It was one of those shipping companies did, and it was like the ugliest thing ever, but it was all electric, and it supposedly is a great thing.
Yeah, it might have been UPS, but I do know FedEx recently rolled out their little bikes in Europe, and they're electric. So instead of the drivers driving their cars around Europe, those European neighborhoods are more congested and smaller, the way their communities work. Yeah, so instead they have these little bikes now, and they have a big box on the front of it where they put the packages,
I love
and
that.
they're electric. So that's one way they're cutting back on carbon emissions. And I do know FedEx said they're going to be carbon neutral by 2040. So
Yeah.
that's why I set it out that far.
Okay. Yeah. 2040 makes sense for as far as carbon neutral stuff goes. It's like we are nowhere near done being reliant on gasoline, but we're making progress. It was, I can't remember where I read it. I'll have to see if I can tag the source in the comments, but something I was reading into is basically like the weird thing that happens when people argue against solar power, electricity, and all that is that it's been getting better on an exponential rate. In 2005 to 10, basically you get like 1/200th of the power from burning the same amount of gasoline that you would from a solar or battery source. Now it's at like 1/50th, and then you think, oh, it's 10 years, that's gone pretty far. What about in 5 years from now? Is it going to be 1/10? If you're making 1/10 of the power in half the time, and then you eventually can surpass that, that's terrific. That's how we get there.
It's moving faster than most people realize. I mean, even just looking at the batteries inside of a Tesla vehicle,
Oh yeah.
we've gone from being able to only travel 150 miles without needing a recharge to 250. Now I think they're above
400.
350. You can go on a full charge, something like that.
Some of them have over 400. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's conservative. That means you're not driving like I do. I've driven them before, and if you take off a few times, you watch, and you're down 30 miles already.
Oh, geez.
But it's just because you get that immediate power, like it just opens. So
Yeah, that's 0 to 60 real quick.
Well, I was having this conversation too the other day where someone was like, yeah, well, I just don't think Tesla's there yet. And I was like, well, hold on for a second. The Model S is from 2012. I see them on the road all the time. And I've talked to I've just been like, hey, dude, how's your Tesla? And he's like, yeah, it still runs great. When is it? 2012. Have you seen any battery depreciation? Yeah, it can go like 20 miles less than it used to. That's 10 years of depreciation and nothing has happened. That's awesome. As opposed to like, you take an internal combustion engine, put 10 years on it, put 120,000 miles on it, it's going to be beat. It's going to be real beat. So I love
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
stuff.
And it's funny, you look at the resale values for pre-owned Teslas, because I've looked at the pre-owned Teslas before thinking I can get a
expensive?
2010 model for cheap. No, they're the same price, if not more expensive for some reason
Because
than
nothing's
the current
depreciating.
models.
There's no depreciation. Nothing's breaking.
Yeah.
There's no oil. There's no moving parts. It's a battery and four wheels. You know what? You change the wheels out.
Yeah, it's insane.
I love it.
It is.
Okay, I think that's probably going to wrap up what we got this week. Just to recap, we touched the McDonald's thing, the robot hotels, Neuralink, the Boring Company, and then more on Tesla battery depreciation and everything. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good recap of what we talked about today. All good stuff.
All right, I love it. We'll see you next week.
Yep, next week, same time.